Hi everyone, my name's Deborah and I'm a felt artist living in the north of England near the Lake District in the UK. I've been a felt maker for 20 years and here are some of my works of art. Today I'm going to show you the complete basics, so if you've never done felting before and you're a complete beginner, then stay with me and very soon you'll be able to make beautiful pictures like these. But for today we're going to learn the basics and make a very simple piece of felt. If you enjoy it, please do like and subscribe, and if you look at my other videos you'll find projects that you can follow along with me once you've learnt these few basic rules. See you soon. So let's have a look at some very basic techniques for wet felting. So to do this you need olive oil soap, olive oil because it doesn't leave any residue on your hand, and you could even leave it in the felt if you didn't wash it off. It would just feel starchy, but it wouldn't disintegrate your work like some of the caustic washing up liquids do, not to mention the damage that washing it up liquid does on your hands. I'll explain why we need soap later. Fresh water, plain water, tepid, not hot, not cold. Something to squirt the water out with. It could be simple as a milk bottle with holes in the top. Otherwise, this is a felting tool, which is really good because it sucks up the water and then you just simply squeeze it out over your work. And then you need the wool. And for this, I've got some merino wool, and there's all different kinds of thicknesses, and I'll explain that in a moment too. And then I've got a felting tool here, which is just something to provide friction, but you don't need one of these as a beginner. You could simply use the friction from the bubbles, rolling it in the mat, and I'll show you that in a moment. There's one more thing that's missing here. I need a piece of net. 1 minute. Here's my net. You can see it's got bits of wool on it from other projects I've done before, but don't worry too much about that. This is just standard window dressing netting. You can get it from any good haberdashery shop and it's very, very cheap. Otherwise you can find them in thrift shops. Okay, so I'm going to show you the process now. So firstly, you're going to unwind your top. This is called a merino top or roving. It's called roving and it's what spinners and felters use or buy to make either felt, or they spin it into yarn. And this is processed in a factory and it's combed in a straight line and wound into a ball. And you usually buy it by the 100-gram packet. And what you have to do is you open it along its length, open it up a little bit, and I'm going to just pull off about 12 inches, 30 centimetres. If I try and pull it apart with a short distance, I really cannot do it. So what you have to do is the wool length is about a hand span, so you have to keep your hands further apart than that. And once they're further apart than that, it comes away really easy. Then with this long length, it makes it a little bit easier if I just separate it again. And then you've got two lengths like that. You could even separate this one again to make 3 lengths. Next step, you're going to pull it out, and to do that you grab hold of the ends and you want to make fine little wisps like this, and I'm going to lay them all out in the same direction, and each wisp is about the same length, which in this case is about 3 inches. I had to take my glasses off then, it makes everything look so much bigger. And I'm just laying it all down in a line in the same direction. And I'm laying it down on top of the bubble side of the bubble wrap. And the reason for that is so that the bubbles will hold the water, keeping the work damp. So I've done one row, which is about 12 inches in this case, and then I simply repeat, and I slightly overlap. Can you see? So I'm gently pulling it. There's no resistance, it comes apart really easily. And when people are beginning, they say, oh, I can't pull it apart, but you simply separate it in the way that I showed you and it makes the pulling really easy. If you don't do that, it's really difficult to pull apart. And also, you don't want to be pulling like big chunks like that, because if you look closely, there's almost several layers within there and the water will not soak it enough, and you want to be able to pass the water and the soap in between layers. So try and keep your wisps, can't even say that word, wisps, really fine. So for this demonstration, I'm just going to do 3 horizontal rows, and then just for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to use a slightly different colour, just so you can see the different layers. And again, I'm splitting it, which makes it easier to pull apart. Sometimes it twists along its length too, so you can just open it up a little bit. Now this one is slightly thicker in the width, but if I hold just the very ends, look how fine those wisps are. It's dreamily fine. And you simply lay it like that. So I'm just going to speed this up a bit. And I'm going to turn it into 3 layers in this case. So here's another layer. And I'm going back now to the horizontal way that I had before. The fibres are vertical, but the row is horizontal. And then I'm just going to do one final check, and if there's anywhere where it's not as covered enough, like here you can see the lilac still poking through the grey purple, so I'm just going to place random bits where I feel it's not as thick, and you can pat it down gently. And I think I'm going to stick with that. So for the next step, you take the net and you simply place it over your rows of fibre. Now, if I were to pick this up, it almost sticks together just because of static. And that's because along each fibre length, which you can't see here, but if I were to put these fibre lengths under a microscope, there are tiny little barbs along each one. And if you're like me and you've got fine hair, do you ever wake up in the morning and because you've been really hot in the night and you've been rolling your head around, the back of your head gets all knotty and your hair is kind of a bit matted together? Well, it's the same thing here. The fibres in the factory have been processed, they've been combed, they're all facing the same direction, and all the barbs are facing in the same direction. But then in separating the fibres, all those barbs become excited and they're all sticking up now, and so you can't feel them, you can't see them with the naked eye, but they're there, believe me. And so down here now all the barbs are sticking up, and because we've put the layers crisscross, effectively these barbs are starting to tangle even with static, and we've pressed them down a little bit, but now we're going to entangle them even more. And imagine those barbs, they're kind of like waving around like this, and eventually they go tighter and tighter and tighter, and they create the felt and they stick together. And in fact, we found pieces of felt thousands of years old. So place your net on top of your work, and then we're going to get some water. So with this thing, you squeeze in to get rid of the air, let it pull out, and as it pops out, it draws up all the water, and then you simply squirt. And if you don't have one of these rubber balls, these rubber squirters, they do have a proper name and I can't think what it is right now, but if you don't have one of these, you can simply get an old milk bottle or a washing up liquid bottle and just put some holes in the top of it and squirt it out. The reason it's better than pouring out, like I wouldn't use a jug, is because as the water comes out, if it was with a jug with force, it would separate those delicate fibres underneath. And you don't want those fibres to separate. You just want them to get very, very damp. And then you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just traversing the soap across the work gently, making sure that it's all covered. And on this particular thing, you can see little bits of fibre from another project, but they've felted already, so they won't tend to felt in, but if they did, you could pick them off afterwards. So you simply wash your tulle or your net curtain afterwards. Incidentally, you can use tulle as well, the kind of thing you use for ballet dancers. And then when I feel I've got enough soap, I'm just going to rub it backwards and forwards gently with my hands. And I'm going to do this for a few moments, probably about 5 minutes. So I'll speed this bit up. You can, if you like, use one of these tools. This is just a piece of wood with the grooves cut out, handmade, and felters like them because they're a little less brutal on your hands, because when you're rubbing all the time you end up with really shiny skin. It's almost like it takes some layers of cells off because of the roughness of the netting, whereas with this you can just glide it around and it makes the work a little bit easier. But these are quite expensive tools, so you have to really be doing it a while before you want to invest in that. Failing that, you could get a sushi mat. Here's one of my old ones, and you simply place that underneath the bubble wrap, and I'll show you later how that would work. But for now, I haven't finished rubbing, so I'm just going to do a few more seconds with this. I'll tell you a little bit about how the soap works as well. Basically, the wool, when it starts off, has lots of lanolin in it, and it's the lanolin that keeps the sheep dry, because it's grease, and it stops the sheep getting wet, and it stops the fibres taking up water. So really you need to get rid of the lanolin so that the fibres will swell, and so the barbs will stick up along the fibre length. And that's one of the reasons we use it. And the other reason is because it's very acidic. Can't speak properly today. It's very acidic, and so you need to create this chemical reaction to make these fibres stick together. So the soap is alkali and it neutralises the fibre, which helps the whole felting process. And in the olden days they used to actually urinate on it. Can you imagine? They actually found pieces of felt, as I said before, on the Mongolian steppes in Asia, thousands of years old. And what they realised people did was, when people were horseback riding across the Asian steppes, like in Mongolia, they would put a raw fleece on top of the horse as if it were a saddle, and they'd sit on it to keep warm. But with the sweat from the horse and the friction as they were riding, this fleece turned into a very, very strong, substantial material, which they realised they could cut up and use it to sew together, to make shoes, to make clothing, even to make houses. And it was from there that the whole felt making textile took off. There, can you see? I'm going to zoom in a bit here. Can you see here? These are the fibres coming through the net, which tells me that I need to have a look because otherwise the net is going to stick to my work. So when you see that happening, be sure to lift up your net and carefully with the back of your hand peel off your work. Now it has stuck a bit. Can you see these fibres here? Again, I'll just zoom in so you can see that. These fibres here. So what you do is when it happens to do that, make sure put your hand on your work and you have to almost rip it off. So don't be afraid to do that. As long as you keep your hand on your work, you can rip it off. But really, I've rubbed that for a little bit too long. You don't want to be rubbing it for that long without checking that your work isn't sticking to your net. So I've rubbed it a little bit now. I'm just going to turn it over. So I'm going to pick it up. It's almost like a piece of material now. Flop it back down. And I'm going to put this netting back over it and just rub it again for a few minutes on this side. There we go. And now I'm going to take it and turn it into a little parcel and roll it. So the next stage is what we call the fulling stage. And so although these fibres seem quite sturdy and stuck down together, I couldn't really use it for anything in this current state because it would just tear apart. So now what we have to do is shrink it. Now I quite like these organic edges, as I call them, but you might want to have straighter edges, and if you do, one or two things you can do here. You can roll the plastic back and just create that straight edge like so, and we'll do the same down at this end. Fold rather than roll. Roll the bubble wrap over like so, and we'll get a nice straight edge. And we'll do the same with these wispy edges up here. Press it down, and the same with these ones here. Fold it over and press it down. In fact, now I'm going to encase the whole thing like so, and then I'm going to simply make a little roll that I can roll backwards and forth like so. And it makes it a bit easier actually if you do this inside your towel. Excuse the state of this old towel, but that's precisely why it's here, because it's an old one with some old dye on it from when I'm dyeing my beautiful colours. And then you just roll it backwards and forwards, and I'll probably roll it backwards and forwards, going from edge to centre, centre to edge. It's getting a bit loose. Let's say 30 times in this direction, and then you can simply open it up and then turn it around and do the whole thing again. Now then, I think I started in this direction before, so let's do it this side. What you want to do is do it that way, that way, that way, that way, then turn it over, and we'll do it that way, that way, that way, and that way, 8 times in total, because wherever you're rolling it, that's the direction it's going to shrink. And the fibres actually shrink along their length, and that's why in the first instance we laid them out perpendicular to one another, so that there's fibres in here in every different direction that you might like. So I'm just going to do this for 30 each way, and then I'll see you in a moment. So I've just opened it up and it has shrunk a little bit, but it's still got a bit to go. So just carry on with that process, making that little tight parcel and making sure that you do turn it around. You can also do it just like so. And there's another technique that I like to do where I do it in my hands as if I'm making some pastry. And then you can actually use your hands. The only thing about doing it within your hands like it's pastry, it might not shrink evenly. And for beginners felting, especially if you want your work to be straight edged and a bit neater, you should really just keep doing it with the rolling method. Oops. You see, without putting the towel around it, it's a little bit more difficult to hold because it's too squidgy. So if you put the towel in it, it just makes the rolling that bit easier. And it will go misshapen as you're going along, like this has. But don't worry too much about that. You can see it's shrunk quite a bit already. And then I'm just going to do the bit that I like to do, which is just simply rubbing it between your hands. And it's a little bit too soapy at this moment, so I'm just going to squeeze out. Wow, I had a lot of soap in there. It just makes it a little bit more cumbersome to do. So I'm just doing it in between my hands like this, rubbing it against itself. And you only do this at the very end, because if you do this too early, you'll end up creating a ball because it will all stick together. And you don't want that. So the only time to do that is right at the end. And the only time you know that you could do that is you would look at the wool, and if it started to go, excuse me, wrinkly, can you see that? Let me just see if you can actually see those wrinkles. The fibres are starting to go like that, and that tells me that that felt is almost ready. And you can stretch it a little bit as well to get the desired shape you want. But that's definitely shrunk, probably about 40%. And 40% is about the maximum shrinkage you can get. One last thing, sometimes I love to do this because it's very cathartic. Just shocking those fibres just a little bit more. And by doing that, those fibres will shrink down even more. So actually it probably wasn't 40% when I said it was 40%, but that's as far as you would go, is 40%. And as you can see, this is shrinking quite a lot now. And if I were to run this under hot water, that would make it go down and shrink even more. But the thing about felt making is you don't want to rush the process, especially the big bit at the beginning, the rubbing. And if you want really fine felt, then I suggest you take a long time in the rubbing stage, because at the very beginning when we're rubbing, that is what will give our felt really smooth and even surfaces rather than being fluffy and lumpy. Sometimes it doesn't matter if it's fluffy, especially if you're doing felt art, but if you're making cushions or fabric, you really want your felt to be smooth. And if we look closely, can you see the very pale fibres, if I hold it like that, have come from the bottom to the top? And conversely, the dark fibres are coming through from the bottom to the top of there. So what has happened is those fibres have completely knitted together. And now this piece I'll set it to dry. Before I do so, I'm going to rinse it in some hot water, and then I will put it in a final rinse with a little bit of clear vinegar, and that will just keep it strong and durable and with a nice shine. So I'll just go and do that now. So here's my piece of felt, and for the last steps what I did, this is a really good technique, just to dry it out, just between a tea towel, rub it backwards and forwards, and it gets it really smooth and really flat. And you can also iron it. This is one good way of drying it, and it just gives it that last little felt. Now the edges still quite wonky. If that was a real problem for you, whilst it's wet, you can stretch it. And it's a lot smaller now. I put some boiling water on it and I threw it a few times in the sink. And if you look at it carefully now, I hope you can, there's enough light on that to see, but you can see it really is rather wrinkly. Can you see that? Oh, that's better. You can see it's kind of almost looks lumpy, but it's not. That's just felt. It's those barbs buckling up, knotting up together and creating that amazing felted effect. And there you have it, our little piece of felt that has shrunk by about 40%. You know, with this piece here you could turn that into a little book maybe. But what I'm going to use it for is to cut shapes out of, because I have a new project on the go, which I'll show you now. And I'll show you this once I've made it. So I bought a new cardigan and it's got these beautiful colours in. So using those colours, the teals, the orange, the purples, I'm going to make myself a beautiful scarf. So I'll show you that next time. If you've enjoyed my simple felt making video, be sure to like and subscribe, and you can receive many more. If you go onto my channel, Deborah's Felt Studio, you can find lots of projects, all for free, which you can sign up for. Just simply follow. Or please go over to my website, deborahsfeltstudio.co.uk, and you find many wonderful things that I'm up to, including holidays and courses online. Take care everybody, see you soon.